I see some familiar faces for the third time. This is our third and final presidential candidate, Dr. Tiffany Evans, and she again will spend some time introducing herself, and then we'll turn it over to you guys for some questions and some communication back and forth. Remember, please, before you leave, to snap that QR code. And I just realized I forgot the hard sheets on my office. So if you need a hard sheet, let me know and we'll make sure you get one before you walk out the door, okay? But snap that QR code so that you can provide some feedback about your interaction today. So up next is Dr. Tiffany Evans.
Can everyone hear me? Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for being here today. And it is a pleasure and an honor to be considered as one of the finalists for your presidency here at Fort Scott. I'm Tiffany Evans, and currently I am the Vice President of Academic Affairs at Colby Community College in Colby, Kansas, which is a whole long, very long 6-hour drive from here. Excuse me. So, which my husband and I made yesterday. And unfortunately, he could not be with us today. He is in town, but he recently underwent some pretty massive dental surgery, and he's not quite ready for prime time. So we decided we were going to leave him just to wander around a little bit today and get a greater feel for the town. Well, let me tell you a little. You might, and I don't know how many of you have seen my resume, but you might kind of be wondering, so, what is this girl from Cleveland, Ohio doing in Kansas with a crazy interest in ag and rural community? Has anyone wondered about that? Just kind of checking. Well, I was born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio. My mom still resides there, and I lived there until my mid-30s. And at that time, my husband and I started traveling for my career. He retired a little bit early. He was a vice president at the community college level for 34 years. And then he failed at retirement, and he's been working ever since for an educational consulting firm out of Bethesda, Maryland. But anyway, I digress. I want to tell you, I am pretty much the embodiment of the American dream. Community colleges were a part of my life before I was even born. Like I said, I'm a first-generation American, first-generation college student. When my parents came to this country, and believe it or not, they had to come halfway across the world to find each other in Cleveland, to go figure. But my dad had an 8th grade education, desperately wanted to be a businessman, did not know the language. My mother did graduate from an American high school. And my dad needed a way to learn English and didn't know how. And he had heard about this place in Cleveland, Ohio, called Cuyahoga Community College, that offered ESL courses for free at night. And my father went there and he learned English. And I am so proud to let you know that he ran a very successful business for 50 years. And which sort of, led me to actually teaching ESL for a while and working for Cuyahoga. So, I mean, that's pretty compelling stuff. And all I heard from my dad so many times, and my mother as well, how important that step was, how important feeling included was, where they had, because my mom, discovered very quickly that my dad had really started making connections and friends through the community college and the help that he would receive. So, that's always kind of stuck with me, and it's always been a part of me. And it's one of the main reasons that I'm standing right here. Now that answers the community college part of the question. But how did I wind up from very, very urban to very, very rural. Well, when I was working as a provost at Elizabethtown Community Technical College in Elizabethtown, Kentucky, which I thoroughly enjoyed, I got a call from the system president one day, and he said, Tiffany, how would you like to be the interim president at a college called Henderson Community College within our system here in Kentucky? I thought, well, gee, I mean, that sounds like a pretty good gig. I might want to try that out at the presidency. And he told me at the time, he said, and if you do this, you cannot apply for the job. And I said, all right, you know, I was open to the new experience. And I thought, why not? And then he tells me, and it's super rural. I'm like, oh my, what did I just agree to? But called my husband, talked to him. He said, let's do it. We went out, and within a very, very short amount of time, we were completely in love with this community, completely in love with the rural lifestyle. My interest in agriculture and agribusiness just grew exponentially. It was amazing. And I really thought about how community colleges needed to be a part of agriculture. Also learn not to get behind a combine when you're on your way to another campus for a meeting. Key points. So my time at Henderson ended, and I, reluctantly left and went back to my old job and kind of was unhappy. He looked at me and he said, and he truly is the most supportive man on earth, because anyone who would put up with all of this, you've got to understand. So he said, well, let's start looking. And we started upon our search. And I found this very interesting community college that had a tremendous emphasis in agriculture in a little town called Colby in Northwest Kansas. We went, reminded me tremendously of Henderson. Fort Scott reminds me of both of them very much. And we said, definitely, this is it. Had this opportunity not literally fallen into my email box, because I wasn't looking, and a friend of mine sent me this and said, hey, this sounds like something you might be really, really good at. And I said, really looking, and I love Colby, and I love my community, and I love all this. And then I really started to think about it. And this opportunity gives me the opportunity to serve in a way that is quite meaningful. I want to serve this community. I'm personally concerned with the growth and the maintenance of our rural communities. And I believe that the community college should be, if it isn't, it should be at the center of every single activity that happens within a community. Let it be the conduit. Let it happen. Let it partner with business and industry. Let it work with the small business owners, with the schools, with community government, with civic organizations, you name it, there's a place for it. Particularly in rural areas, the community college has a place for everyone. I don't like it when I hear people say, community colleges, we can't be everything to everyone. Yeah, we can, and we should be, and we need to be. Not always easy, but it's the right thing to do, because when you are doing the right thing for students, you will get the right results. When you're doing the right thing for your community, you will get the right results. Now, what really got to me was the tagline for this institution: students first, community always. Sold me right there. All I needed to know. Did my research, but that seriously told me everything I needed to know. This is exactly the right fit and exactly the opportunity to serve in a meaningful way. And especially with smaller institutions, you know all your students. I know almost all of mine. You know all your faculty. You know so much of the community. There are some Saturday mornings I'm a little less than thrilled that I can't go to the grocery store without lipstick, but you know, that's the price you pay. And I'm very much a what you see is what you get. I'm very open, very honest, ethical, have a deep sense of integrity, have a deep sense of service. And more than anything, I have a commitment to just fellow people. I love everyone because they are people. And when you operate your life from that state of gratitude and that state of giving, you can't help but move forward. You can't help but move a community forward. And it's so exciting, and it's a beautiful thing to see. And when I see students and I see community and I see business all coming together in one spot with the schools, with everyone, it's the most exciting thing ever. And when you see those successful students, you see that community growing, you see good things happening, it's all worth it. Doesn't happen overnight. And it can come at a pretty hefty price tag. We all know that. Nothing comes cheap. But I will tell you, it is well worth it. I have held every position in the academic line, from adjunct faculty to faculty, dean, executive dean, provost, vice president, development vice president, academic vice president, even interim president. I'm ready to take this on. And because I've had the opportunity, we have, had the opportunity to live all over the country because we could, we are a little bit ready to make some roots and make a more permanent commitment. And, this is kind of the place we're looking for. It is the place we're looking for. At least we have done so from our research and our exploration and just kind of having fun with it. But that's just a little bit about who I am. And I am more than happy to answer any questions you may have. And I'll open up the floor. I think a mic is coming up for you. Oh, okay. I will, and I don't mean to not look at you.
Have a place to put the Wi-Fi more center. That might do it.
Yeah, well, if you want to put up the one of the other mics, that's fine. Go ahead.
I think I'm back real quick. We'll switch you. Yes.
Testing.
All right. Yes, sir.
I'm Jim Burrows, and I'd like to know what your plan is for bringing more students or more learners to the college.
Well, there's quite a bit of research that goes into that question, but at this point, I will tell you that the enrollment numbers have been declining here. That's very obvious. Just looking at the iPads reports and looking at the Kansas data book, we know that there's a decline.
We also know that while persistence and retention have decent returns here, completion still remains low. So it's a combination of paying attention to all of those things. It's not just enrollment, but it's retaining the students once they get here, putting them on a path that's going to lead them to completion, and then getting them across the finish line to completion. Then it's transfer or work. A lot of this can happen through partnership with the public schools. I think that's a critically important thing. And I think also we're ignoring a very important population in terms of the non-traditional student, the over 26 crowd, perhaps people who are working and need to have established a pathway that they can both work and go to school. Another thing I think that is missing is a workforce and economic development component where we're partnering with business and industry. We're bringing in opportunities to upskill existing employees and also providing opportunities to students to work within the pipeline of getting into business and industry. To me, those are some very key things. Also, niche programming. I don't think that it happens overnight, and I'm not exactly positive what is needed, but I can give you an example from Colby Community College, where in Western Kansas, we have a large number of feedlots. And we kept hearing from our business and industry partners that those feedlots did not have the personnel that they needed. So what we created was a 1-semester certificate that focused not only on the traditional skills of working in a feedlot, but we also included what we like to call as a feedlot Spanish course. There's a lot of barriers in communication within Hispanic workers and non-Spanish speaking managers and other employees. So by creating this type of construct, we've created a way for them to communicate better and take down some of the barriers. We also had, we looked at horsemanship within this because we realized that operating while on horseback is different than when you're standing on your own 2 feet. So we incorporated that kind of instruction. We did farm welding instead of traditional booth welding because that's what's important to that industry. So it's learning about what's important to which industries that need a pipeline of workers, and we can help bring them here. Those are just a few examples. I'm sure everyone heard that.
Hi, I'm Rhonda Bailey, and I taught here for over 35 years. And my question is, how are you going to support faculty?
Faculty and staff really are the most critical members of this college community. Now, oftentimes it's staff who has a lot of the frontline responsibilities, and but it's faculty who do the day-to-day, every single day, working with the students, getting them from point A to point B or from A to Z. Supporting faculty comes in many forms. It can be things, obviously like professional development, things like that. But there's something that I feel is far more important. And that is not only listening to the faculty, it's not only hearing the faculty voice, it's listening to it. Understanding that faculty know what is best for their students programmatically and taking that guidance into account. It's giving them the opportunity to grow their programs, giving them access to the resources that they need to make their students more successful. And it's working together with faculty in partnership. I always say this, there's never a reason for there to be a divide between faculty and administration. Doesn't need to exist. It's a very symbiotic relationship, and in partnership, great things can happen. If you're doing the right things for students, you're going to get the right results, and that's what we are here for. So it is in partnership, in collaboration, in respect, and in openness and authenticity that support extends. And we find ways to do it. It's involving faculty in all aspects of the college. It's involving them in everything from helping plan the informed budget process to working during negotiations with the master agreement. It's all of these things put together. It's finding ways to showcase faculty. It's finding ways to help them help our students achieve.
Question, how long have you been at Colby Community College, and how would you compare the size of Colby Community College to Fort Scott?
I've been at Colby for almost 3 years, and it's pretty much identical. It's pretty much identical in terms of numbers of students, traditionally aged students, lots of athletes living in the dormitories. The size of the town is very similar, although the downtown here seems a little bit more active. But this is they're very like communities and like institutions. They have a heavy, ag presence. I'm very interested in the fact that here there is additional workforce training, which the workforce initiatives are so critical. CTE is exactly, what we need to be paying attention to, because it fills so many needs within the contemporary marketplace. So that's kind of exciting for me. It looks like the secondary school partnerships are very similar, growing, and will continue to grow. So I would say very, very similar.
Well, if you wouldn't mind, just for the people online. Thank you.
I'm Bernita Hill. I taught here for 30 years, and then I've been a trustee 2 years ago, 19 of the. It's a long time to be a part of this college. My question seems generic, and yet it's not really. I'm wondering, where do you see community colleges in 5 years or farther out than that?
Great question. Community colleges are ever evolving. I don't think they're necessarily going to be the same next year. And we have to have that sort of nimble malleability that we can turn on a dime and respond to the needs of our business and industry community, of our community in general, and what our students need and want and are interested in. Let's face it, for example, if it weren't for so many of the community colleges, we would have even fewer healthcare workers than we currently have. But we're not training our healthcare workers in the same way that we did before. There's a next gen exam now for the NCLEX. There's new ways of looking at questions. There's new ways of training. There's new ways of how things are phrased and how things are explained. Everything's changing. And so while we still have to maintain the core general education and transfer programs, those are critically important. I have a mic. I forgot I can look at this direction now. we have to have all of those things. They're critically important and we want to have all of those things, but we also want to have the programming that's going to be, like I said, so responsive that employers are not waiting forever to get qualified workers, that they're willing to pay high wage for high demand types of careers and skill sets. Community colleges are who provide that. They make it possible. While there's still a whole heck of a lot of paperwork that goes into getting a new program off the ground, compared to what the universities have to go to, we can be much more nimble, and we are. We just have to make the commitment to do it together. So it's not just a commitment from administration or faculty or staff or business and industry or government. It is a commitment across the board to do this together, to build that stronger community. Because if you want this community to continue to grow and in honesty, regrow in some cases, this is the way to do it. You entice people to want to be here, to come here, and to realize that at Fort Scott Community College, you're going to be not only getting a potential worker, employee, professional that is highly skilled, highly trained, you're also getting the value added benefit of knowing that this student, this individual was well cared for from the moment they started to even after they graduate, that there is constant contact within the college to build these students, to build these relationships. So there's no telling really what they're going to look like, but I know it's not going to be the same, but I know a whole lot of partnership is needed.
Dr. Evans?
Yeah.
Okay. I was taught to stand when I addressed a lady for the first time. In fact, I learned that in Mrs. Hill's class in 1970.
I love it.
And I learned well. Thank you for that acknowledgement about Students First, Community Forever. There's a significant portion of the community that feels like this college is prime for a turnaround. There's a lot of work to be done. A lot of things haven't been done, and we're looking forward to having someone who will basically just dive into it and get it done. With that tagline, Students First, Community Forever, what would you do initially to close that cavernous gap and start to bring the two together?
Well, I don't, because I am coming from the outside, I can only gauge by what I have researched and what I've heard a little bit from folks. Whatever gaps exist don't need to exist. They simply don't. If the whole idea is to create an institution and a community that is working together in symbiotic partnership, the gap goes away because the goal is the same. It's on the same side. There doesn't have to be a this side and a that side. We're all in this together, because that's part of what community means. And you listen to the needs, and I am not by any means commenting on anyone's, success or, places where people could have done better. I have no idea. And everyone, I believe, is working to the best of their abilities. But my perspective is to do this together. And I used to ask this of my students, and I've kind of carried it forward. And I tell people, suspend belief just for a little while. Suspend belief. Give me your trust. I will give you mine. And I will never give you a reason not to trust me. And I would expect the same from you. Now, Isn't that amazing to have that level going into it? That's that humanity again. That's the empathy. That's the caring. That's when we're working for the right reason. We're working for the reason to make this a stronger community, a better community, a community that more people want to be a part of, an institution that has value added benefits everywhere. That's incredible. That's what we want. So if that is truly what we want, then I would approach the community, the institution, anyone that I could get to listen to me is let's do this together. There's no way one person can do it or even a small group. It's all of us. It's every single person who is a part of this institution and community needs to come together in working toward betterment. No need for, whatever is in the past. And I'm not even sure I know. There's a lot of things that happen within a community. Whatever is in the past is in fact the past. Leave it there. Doesn't have to exist anymore. If you give me this opportunity, I will work tirelessly to bridge any gaps that may exist. I will work to always do the right thing for the student and for the community, and we do it together. And I guarantee you, there will be success. And you can't argue with success. I'd love to give it a go.
Hi, Bailey Lyons. So that all sounds great. Everybody working together symbiotically and cohesively and collaboratively, but give us an example in your past experience where that wasn't the case and something you did to try to bring a common thread, and what was the result of that?
Yes, I know. Shocking that on occasion, things don't, there is this thing where people don't work together, and I don't know, it just doesn't kind of all gel at the same time. And there's always going to be some folks who may not want to participate in an idea because it's diametrically opposed to whatever they may be feeling, or perhaps they just don't like change or don't want to change. And, I can respect that too. But one thing that I have done at Colby Community College was lead the reorganization of the academic divisions. Now, shockingly, that was not the easiest task on earth. And I was working with academic council, representing all the different divisions, and I couldn't understand why some of them existed in the way they did. And so I started asking questions. And people started telling me stories about, 20 years ago, they were kind of organized by building. Makes sense to me, but it made no sense in terms of an academic structure. And not everything was that way. But when it came time to working through the process of reorganizing and making a more, shall I say, cohesive academic structure, we worked hard. There were a few people who consistently didn't want it to happen. So they would spend inordinate amounts of time stopping trying to make it happen. Yeah, that felt wonderful. Talk about taking some heat. But I knew it was the right thing for our students. So I continued. And there were other people who recognized it. Ultimately, came up with a draft of what the divisions would look like and what the different chairs would look like and all of this. And I said, we can scratch things out. We can draw arrows. We can move things around. This is just a draft. Well, ultimately, it happened. And although not everybody was overjoyed about it, there were more people that because we really started communicating about it. Because I learned part of my error in this was I didn't communicate enough on what was happening with the potential changes. So I was relying on other people to communicate. Not the way to go. I had to do it. It was my responsibility. And once I started doing that and answering the questions directly and working through it, we actually made the transition, and we are an extremely strong academic team today as a result. Our divisions are reorganized. It's not to say I'll still don't hear a complaint now or then, but it's the right thing for the right students, because then it led into our implementation of guided pathways, which you may or may not know is now going to be required through KBOR. They're calling it the 7 buckets, but it's still guided pathways. Fort Scott's almost there. I was reading the catalog last night, which truly, as I said earlier, does prove I'm the biggest dork in the world, because I was actually enjoying it as well. And it was like 1:30. And but we're almost there. We're in good shape. We need to take a couple steps forward. And I promise you, it will be extremely effective. But there's an example of something that took way longer than I thought it would and had a lot of blowback.
Thank you so much for that answer. Do you have an example, and I should have been more specific, but where you worked in the college environment with like business and industry or community to try to get people on board with a common idea or to institute something?
Oh, absolutely. One of my favorite examples comes from my time in Kentucky. And advanced manufacturing was really very big in we were basically central Kentucky, between Louisville and Lexington. And I was working with a very large number of HR folks from our different advanced manufacturing partners. And one lady in particular, she kept telling me, I want them to get this degree. I don't want them to lose any time with their families. I don't want them to take too much time away from work. The laundry list kept growing and growing and growing and growing. Finally, I was like, okay, I do not have the crystal ball or the magic wand that's going to immediately solve this issue. But I came up, after talking to a lot of faculty, a lot of business and industry folks, came up with the following plan. We started taping lectures in a very meaningful and different way, where the tapes would stop, where their diagrams would show up. It was highly interactive. Students who were already employed in advanced manufacturing and had some knowledge of the equipment would view these on their own time, whether it's evenings, weekends, what have you. Then we also were able to dual credential those working in the plants as faculty. They also worked with a master faculty member, which was an advanced manufacturing faculty from the college. So labs could be conducted on site. Again, not taking away time from families, not taking away too much time from work. And when it came time for testing, that's when they would come to the college and be tested in a normal fashion. You can do it in 2 years, and it worked like a charm.
Hi, Lori Cable. To follow up on these questions, as was said, a significant portion of the community feel like there is a huge gap. So I think that we can agree with your big picture version, but can you tell me the details, the steps that you would take to integrate community and the college?
Well, first and foremost, always, I have to get to know folks and get to know the lay of the land. I believe that the only way to build the kind of relationship that I'm talking about is that we get to know each other on more meaningful levels. Now, I know that's not realistic for every single person. But it's being visible, not only at the college, but being visible within the community, working on those boards as I do now, partnering with folks, getting to know people, hearing what the needs are. Everything, in my opinion, is based on a relationship. And if you can't build these strong relationships, and it take a little time, like I said, but if you want to suspend belief and do the trust thing early, it helps move things along. But it's a matter of taking some time. It's a matter of finding out what's important to this community. It's a matter of sometimes even finding out where the pain is coming from. Because it's not your, but the your perception. If there is perceived pain, let's get to the bottom of it, find out what caused it, and clear it out. But it is relationship building 101. You absolutely have to do it. And without, knowing more about the specifics of any issues that could exist, I can't, fairly answer that, but I know I would give it the time to try and work through it from a very personal relationship, and being very, very visible within the community, and being a part of not only just things that the college is associated with, but those things that benefit the community in general.
I'm Lindsay Madison. I'm the president of our Fort Scott Area Chamber of Commerce.
Hi.
Bailey's our current board chair. But you mentioned that Colby and Fort Scott are very similar, and I'm not totally familiar with the Colby Chamber of Commerce, but do you have an example of your engagement or involvement with the Chamber of Commerce, which represents the local business community?
Absolutely. Unfortunately, in the past, I would say about 4 years, there has been tremendous turnover within our chamber, not because of a poor situation. One was a health issue, one was a family issue, one was an individual who took another job and then changed back. There were a few things that have happened, but we are involved. There's definitely an ambassador connection that we try to really uphold and work toward. I'm not personally a member of that because, like I said, it hasn't gone into full swing. We just recently were able to hire a new full-time director. So I'm not sure what their vision and what their desires and needs are moving forward, but I do know that we'll definitely be connecting.
My name is Marcy Williams, and you've spoken of your love for Colby and the rural area out there. And you've been there less than 3 years, and then you're looking at another rural community college.
Mm-hmm.
This is quite an investment to hire a new president, and the work that goes into that to find the right person. And if you are successful as a candidate for the presidency, what can we expect as far as what I'm thinking is the first year is going to be a time of learning. Second year, probably get things in place. I don't feel like a 2 plus a 3-year commitment would meet the needs of the community.
Nor do I plan to make it one. When we experienced life in Henderson and saw the quality of our life improve significantly, that told us that we really wanted to be in a rural, agriculturally based community in general. When we found Colby, we knew we had hit the right place and the right notes. You don't have to live in a place for an extended period of time to know it's right for you. What I've really further discovered is that same type of environment with the opportunity to serve in a capacity that would allow me to help influence the lives of many students and a community to grow, is exactly what we're looking for. They say, I think it's a tagline for Texas that says, I wasn't born here, but I got here as fast as I could. Well, the fact is, I didn't know I loved rural life until I really started living it. And the same goes for my husband. And we're making a commitment where we're ready to put down some roots. I'll also share this with you. Maybe this will help explain a few things. My mom, who is still in Cleveland, my dad is no longer with us, but my mom is still in Cleveland. And she said she wouldn't move in with us until I got the presidency, because that's when the roots would be settled. Well, she said, okay, you get this, I'm coming too. So it's a small family, but you're getting all of us. It's something, you cannot predict someone's longevity anywhere. But the fact of the matter is, I'm making a promise that this is something that I'm looking at and my family's looking at is long-term, not short. This is not a stepping stone for me. I'm kind of over that. And not that I've looked at that, but as you rise through any career, you do go through different phases. I want to reach this point where I can serve as, like I said, where I have the opportunity to serve at a level that I think will impact a large number of people in a community that I think we could be very comfortable in. And who knew that we'd love either Henderson or Colby, and we loved both. And I see so much of that here. So I think the probability is super wonderful. If given the opportunity to serve here, we're here for the long haul.
Hi, I'm Patty LaRoche. Thank you for coming here today and sharing your story with us. I taught high school here for 20 years, retired a few years ago. And I think one of my frustrations with the junior college was that sometimes we would see things just as community members that needed to be done. And I was always one who would be taking the step to call and say, is there any reason that this is happening? One of the things I'm talking about is sitting back here. Mert Barrows was always present at the high school. She was the go-between between the junior college and Fort Scott High School, and her table was always set up in the lobby recruiting kids to Fort Scott High School. When she left the community college, we rarely saw anybody at the high school again, certainly not with her presence, just rarely was somebody out there. We have a beautiful facility called the Ellis Center, which is a theater that was established here, and yet Gary Culler's wife, Sally, was a director. I directed musicals as well. We weren't allowed to use it. They have a huge dance recital here every year, and they go to Pittsburgh because they're not allowed to use it. We have an underutilized facilities here. I think the Gordon Parks facility is just brilliant, but I don't think people even know it's here, because when I meet people in the world that I'm in, they'll say, where should we go? And I say, go to the Gordon Parks Center. What is it? I just think we've not done a really good job of singing the praises for what we have out here. And I know a lot of it is communication. A lot of it is, and that's a very generic word, but I just wonder, how do you improve the communication between what we have here and what people don't seem to recognize? And the last thing I'm going to say is, we were living in Florida a few years ago where my husband was working, and the junior college there sent out a booklet every 3 months that listed all of the speakers who were going to be coming in. If you were interested in this, you could sign up for a one-night class. And I called the college here and I said, can I drop off this brochure and show you what's happening somewhere else? I did, nothing happened. So I think it's a problem that even though I'm kind of a nobody and I'm not on staff here. And so, but I still had some opinions that sometimes I think the community people just aren't being heard.
And that's a really hard thing. Again, I believe that everyone within a community needs to participate within the community college to make the community more successful. And I can tell you today that if you came to me with that book, there would be something I'd be looking at. I don't believe in reinventing the wheel if I don't have to. And if someone's already doing something well, let me know about it. Help me make this happen. I want everyone from this institution, from this community to work. I mean, I know it sounds very broad to say work together, but that's the way I operate. It's a collaboration. It's a partnership. It's a trust building experience. And we do it because we care about a community. We care about our students. We want to make it stronger and better. And unless you give the opportunity for someone to prove that they are willing to do this, I can't give you a better guarantee than that, because I always want to know what someone else is doing well, because I want to see if we can even do it better. Why not? And if someone's doing it well and it doesn't need to be improved about, maybe let's tailor it to ourselves. It's just, I think sometimes we make things harder on ourselves when either the communication isn't there or the respect. I don't know what your experiences have been, but communication is something I have learned that is critical, and it has to be regular and constant and transparent. And I've often said this: you may not love what I always have to say, but you will hear the same thing come out of my mouth to every single group that I'm addressing. And it's authentic, and it's real, and it's honest, and it's ethical. It might not be great news, but it's those things.
Thank you. Patty, that specificity was refreshing. That's more than a concept. That kind of went straight to the point. Should you get this position, and I'm going to reiterate, in my opinion and the opinion of a lot of people in this community, it's more of a turnaround than it is a lateral process. And in my experience in private business, not education, I don't come from your background. You'll get many opportunities early on to open your door, listen objectively, take copious notes, entertain the prospects of third-party objective study, if we'll call it. And we'll hold you to your word refreshingly. We'll look forward to it, and we'll ask you to reach back. That's something that's badly needed in this. That's part of the cavernous gap that we're referring to. It's kind of a common thread with the comments in this meeting today. So thank you anyway.
And I will say that not following through is one of the most damaging and trust destroying things that I think anyone can do. So, like I said, the news may or may not always be good, but the follow through is there, the communication is there, and the planning. How can we get to a better place? I mean, I think we've all at once upon a time read the book Getting to Yes, where you find ways to get to yes, not constantly rely as no as a fallback. That doesn't always have to. Sometimes no is the answer, and that's hard, but that's life. But getting to yes, if you are willing to show good faith and effort, in getting to a better place, I say we've done the right thing. And you can hold me to my word, and you can remind me of that many times if given the opportunity, because that's what I'm about.
During your interim presidency, what was a decision that you got wrong? And in your experience past that point, in hindsight, what would you do differently?
And I have to be careful on how I phrase this because it does involve some confidential pieces. We had a student incident that was not a pleasant one. And the administrative leadership had kind of decided to keep it a little further away from me than was appropriate, and made some decisions. And I allowed that to happen to a certain degree. As the situation unfolded, and I realized very quickly that in situations of that kind of gravity, it is critical for someone standing in my shoes to have all the facts and not allow decisions to be made in a more scattered way that didn't necessarily follow policy, which is very dangerous. And it took a while to get the situation under control, and it ultimately was resolved, but it was about 10 times more agony than it should have been. And, you know, people felt as if that it wasn't as important as it really was. And so that was a very big learning lesson for me. So, you know, chains of communication and expectations of communication are now always set very upfront coming from my end. And that way, that kind of situation can be avoided. Like I said, fortunately, it worked out well, but it was a difficult student situation that was very painful. I've heard nothing from you.
I'm Larry Ness. I'm not a faculty member or been in administration at the college, but I've been involved in some fashion or another in about every other aspect. We've occasionally heard about consolidation of community colleges. I don't have any opinion one way or another on that, but I am kind of curious to know what you think about it.
Well, those are very individualized situations. I don't think there is a one size fits all solution to when this happens. If you look at the state of Virginia that consolidated a very large number of their community colleges, or even worse, Connecticut did a horrible thing where they were pushing like 3 and 4 large community colleges together under the leadership of one president. And ultimately, what happened was the quality of their education went down. There were a lot of hard feelings. There were a lot of faculty who felt disenfranchised. There were a lot of students who didn't feel cared for. There was staff that didn't know where they belonged. So I would say, in my experience, it's never an easy thing. In some cases, it works well. In Kentucky, it did work well, where they combined the community colleges and the technical colleges. It took them about 10 years to get over it, but now it functions as a very healthy system. You look at Florida, where they took the word community out of community college, and now they call them all state colleges. And they combined a lot of them. These aren't easy, and it could be viewed as sometimes as a cost savings. I think it just comes down to individual situations and what makes sense for a given community. But my real feeling is it's not just community college. It's not just the college in the community. It is the community's college. It belongs to the community. And that's who has to be served. So those students are a member of that community. So when we're doing that, we're doing the right thing.
I'm just curious, from the time you took over at Colby 3 years ago and implemented these new programs, which sound really exciting, how much has the college grown in the last 3 years?
We are, if not the only one of two that is actually increased in enrollment. We have the highest graduation rate in the state of Kansas for community colleges, and we have the highest retention rate in the state of Kansas. So I think those are pretty good endorsements of what we're doing well. We have really, really embraced the student first concept and engaging those students constantly. And when that happens with exciting new programming, I think positive results are almost certain to come. Okay.
What are you going to do to help promote student life on campus? And even for those kids that live maybe within the community, to help to kind of grow that and bond the students together a little bit more?
Such an important part. The co-curricular activities, student life, all of that, it all coalesces to make a holistic college experience. We want, it's not, the primary reason anyone is here is because they want to learn, they want to, earn a degree, a credential. But there is much more to the whole college experience than that. And we want to do it in a way that is inclusive, that is fun, that makes students feel welcome and wanted. I've read it a million times, and I know it's true. When students for no apparent reason decide not to come back to a given school, the main reason is I've seen, I don't feel wanted. I don't feel cared for. I don't feel included. So whatever we have to do to make that happen, I think there's a lot of cool things that are already happening. Maybe we just have to grow those, maybe focus on them a little more, have a little, experiment a little more with first year experience, with activities that happen on the weekends that aren't just based for on-campus students, but be inclusive of those living off campus, and growing the clubs, growing athletics are a key way for people to get involved, but that's not everybody's bag. But, we have to find ways to connect people. I think a huge way of doing that is, when you're doing that initial assessment of a student when they're coming in, find out what they're interested in, get them in the first year experience cohort that maybe has other people that are interested in it, or maybe totally different, but give them opportunities where they can come together and not feel like, oh, am I going to have anyone to talk to? Or, is nobody going to like me? I mean, make it so it feels organic, even if we had to organize it just a little bit. Does that help?
I was just curious, if anything stands out related to funding that you've done creatively or led or been a part of over the past few years related to grants or endowments or partnerships, to affect the cost of doing business or new programs?
Absolutely. Thank you for that question because it does give me the opportunity to talk to something that is very important to me, and that is grantsmanship in fundraising. I'm a very avid grant writer and fundraiser. I have personally raised about $64 million in grants, and I have personally raised about $22 million in personal ask for institutions of higher learning, particularly community colleges. All of those funds have been used to defray educational costs. Some have gone into scholarship. Most of them have gone into programming and equipment. I've also had the experience of working with the legislature, working with different governmental bodies to help promote what the college, a given college, has and is doing, and how their help can actually help us. Many times a legislator just doesn't know, or a group of legislators just don't know what's going on. And you have to actually get over to the Capitol and you have to go and do what I call a little bit of a dog and pony show and kind of show off what you're doing. And the best thing you can bring with you are some of those students, because nobody is going to respond better than to see a student who is succeeding. And it's because of some funding that they were a part of giving. That is hugely important, and it works very, very well. Also, I noticed when I was looking through the data book that there seems to be a lack of private foundation funding. Actually, there's zero coming in according to the data book. When I did a little further investigation, the state of Kansas, there's private foundations in Kansas, and about a third of their funds are left on the table because nobody's applying for them. I'm here to tell you, I'd like to spend their money. How about you? It's a good thing to do. Absolutely. It's a lot of fun to spend money on things that you know are going to improve students' lives. Had about enough of me.
And you might have already touched on this. My name is Ann Dare. In your research, what is one thing that is high priority for you to implement immediately, as fast as you can, that would make a significant change, whether it be student life or academics or buildings or whatever? And then what is something that you saw that that's going to take a little bit of time?
Something that I would like to do as quickly as possible, although it's, again, not an instant answer, is to really understand what boutique and niche programs that are short-term can be added to the college's curriculum, and get the partnerships in place to help make those happen, get those taken through KBOR and the TEA, get them on the rolls as quickly as possible, and get students enrolled and working in them. And part of that is having a very healthy marketing stream. And fortunately, with the advent of social media, yes, it apparently does have some good uses. Really because that is speaking to a lot of the constituents that we're aiming to target and really show off these new programs. I think something that's going to take a little bit longer is actually taking care of the maintenance of parts of this campus. Things like paving are not cheap. We know now is not the time necessarily to do that, but there is much to be said for the aesthetic qualities of an institution. It's not the most important thing, but when you have parents and kids coming through, you want to make sure that your facilities and your institution look as good as the quality of the education that's already existing there. And while that will take a little bit of time, that is something that I am willing to invest in. I know the college received a lot of HERF money during COVID. We all did. That's wonderful because the funds were well spent, but they barely put a dent in what we all really need. So I think either building new spaces, renovating older spaces, taking care of those deferred maintenance pieces, those are things that take time but are necessary.
All right. Guys done? Yes, he says yes. Okay, and that will give you a chance to take a breather before we
Thank you.
start the phase in a few minutes.
All right.
Yeah. Saw the maroon and I thought you were Tom, which really confused me because I knew he was back there. Okay, so like I said earlier, remember to snap that QR code on your way out, or if you need a hard copy, Tom did so kindly go get those hard copies. You can from me before you leave. I had a request to discuss the board's timeline. I can't speak for the board, but I do know they're planning to move very quickly. Whether that be making a decision and approving something at the next board meeting, or making a decision at that next board meeting and approving it thereafter. So that's about as close of an estimate as I can give. But just stay tuned because I know they're ready to make a decision. Not ready like they have their mind made up. That's called stepping in it, right? Anyway, they're eager to make a decision. Okay.
Thank you so much for spending time with me.